Hello and welcome to the Capital Conversation with me, Michael Hayman. Now, The Dots is a self-styled LinkedIn for the creative industries. It's a network of 250,000 doers, dreamers and makers. And it's the brainchild of my guest today, Pip Jamieson. Pip, very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Now, you're an expert in careers.
Correct.
And you've had quite a career yourself, you know, from the civil service fast track to a job with David Blunkett to running MTV in Australia. Is that just your life, or is that increasingly how a lot of talented people are having a very diverse career?
Yeah, I mean, we look after what we call no-collar workers, and I think I'm the epitome of no-collar workers.
Right, so I'm definitely a collared worker. So what's a no-collar worker?
It's creatives, it's freelancers, it's entrepreneurs, it's people who are adopting like more portfolio-based careers, creative careers, people who job hop and are very ambitious, and they're harder to automate.
And so the dots, why the name?
Well, it's kind of join the dots, connect the dots. So, you know, we are a LinkedIn challenger. We're built around that kind of future workforce, and that's what we do. We connect the dots.
And in some respects, you're the antithesis of LinkedIn. I mean, you've talked about LinkedIn as being ripe for disruption. I mean, what would Reid Hoffman be saying if he was looking at the dots as a potential competitor?
Well, I think it's kind of lucky Reid has sold.
So you might be coming to work with the dots.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
But you said it's ripe for disruption,
Yeah.
LinkedIn. I mean, is that an audacious challenger's goal, or do you think there's more truth in it than that?
I think, you know, people think something like LinkedIn is you know, people can't actually disrupt LinkedIn, but that's exactly why I think it can be disrupted. I mean, it was designed around a very traditional white-collar, linear workforce, but that's not how people are working these days. People are constantly job hopping, they're finding new careers, and it's just not the way life works.
Well, I was reading more about the no-collar workers. Under 35, unwilling to don a suit, I don't want full-time work. I think I'm out on all three counts. I mean, we often hear about the downsides of the gig economy. Is this its upside? Is the freedom? Is that freedom of choice what you're helping to realise?
Yeah, it's freedom of choice. It's actually working for employers you love, like people who share your values. You know, that whole like, I work to live, that's going. You know, people actually want to enjoy what they do every day, and we look after that community.
And you've got to be talented to be in that community,
Correct.
right? And in terms of their kind of value to the economy, is that being increasingly recognised? Is that why a business like the Dots exists?
Yeah, I mean, nearly 10% of the UK workforce works in the creative industries. But I think what's more fascinating is that it's one of those industries that's least susceptible to automation, and that's why I'm so passionate about looking after them.
Well, we might come back to automation, but before we do that, let's just talk about you for a minute, because I had to laugh out loud that you studied economics as an act of rebellion. I mean, it seems to be the most conformity-led decision most people can make. Tell us why.
Okay, so my dad was a creative. He worked in the music industry, and so there was always that expectation that I'd go in the creative industries. But yeah, my way of being a rebel is I went into maths and economics at university.
Right, so you understood macroeconomics. But then I hear you read The Dummy's Guide to Marketing and became the head of MTV in Australia. Was it?
Classic no-collar career. You know, economics was fine, maths was fine. I wanted a new challenge, so I applied for a job.
So you're a good blagger?
So I'm a good blagger and a quick learner,
Right.
and so we all need to be.
But in the meantime, you've used some of those skills, some of those assets in life to raise recently £4 million, getting advertising legends to John Hegarty as an investor, and some pretty impressive clients. I mean, you're making it look very easy. I mean, is it?
Any entrepreneur that says it's easy is lying.
Well, what's the difficult bit?
Oh, gosh, you know, it's a constant roller coaster of highs and lows. But I think, you know, it's one of the most exciting things you could ever do with your life. And I now have the funds and an amazing community and a brilliant product. So I'm kind of on that high bit.
And was that fundraising? Was that to you? Was that a kind of massive proof of concept moment that actually people were prepared to get their checkbooks out and back it?
Yeah, funnily enough, the proof of concept came from me where actual clients were getting their checkbooks out and backing it. I mean, the money now just allows us to accelerate, but I'm really proud only about 3% of women get to my stage, so it's great.
And where that acceleration might take you in terms of the next chapter for the business, where do you see it going?
So for now, it's about focusing on the creative industries here in the UK, because London's actually the biggest creative cluster in the whole of the world. And then it's also developing a roadmap for
so this will
international
take you global.
It will start taking us global.
I mean, the other interesting thing about the capital is that, I mean, you're unusual in that there aren't many female founders that are getting money at all, but only just over 2% of global venture capital is going to females. How did you do it? What's the lesson for other women leaders in business?
Do you know what? For the first month, I met every investor that I heard that asked really bad questions, and I literally got myself pitch ready. I was almost coming home to my husband every night crying on his shoulder, but by the end of that month, I had all the answers. I had all our DDs.
What was the most difficult question they asked you?
Oh, am I going to have kids?
Right. But presumably not the same. If you'd been a man asking that money, presumably asking for that money, you'd never been asked the same question.
No, and do you know what?
Do you feel annoyed about that?
No, do you know what? Funny enough, I kind of like that they asked it, because you go into other pitches and you think they're thinking it. So I'd rather it just be out in the open, and I'd rather just absolutely explain my stance on it. And I think that's actually quite a brave question to have asked.
But a lot of people feel that that sort of questioning it's sexist, it's wrong, it has no place in a modern economy like the UK. Is that your feeling, or are there in fact advantages you can have as a ambitious woman actually sort of working against these barriers in terms of things you might be able to do with it?
Yeah, do you know what? There are some brilliant advantages to being a woman. I mean, I've got incredible mentors. I think men are more willing. There's brilliant men out there that want to see more women coming through the ranks in tech, and so I'm getting some incredible mentors that I might not have been able to do if I was a man. But there are unconscious bias that exists, and there are challenges that face female founders, and I'm just trying to help those female founders as
And
well.
if you were to give one piece of advice through this show to a female founder considering funding, what might that be?
I would say if you're in your early stages, there's some brilliant female networks out there like Angel Academy who will back female founders at that earlier stage. And I would say just go and approach brilliant men in tech for advice. Actually trying to get female tech mentors is really hard because there aren't that many women in the senior roles to mentor.
I interviewed Helena Morrissey a few weeks ago on this show, and she's just written a book called A Good Time to Be a Girl. Is it?
It is the best time to be a girl. It's the best time in history. I'd say when you know, the next generation will be the best time to be a girl, but it's definitely the best time in history.
So in terms of the why it's the best time to, I mean, if you were starting again right now, would it be easier, do you think?
Yes, but we're only 3 years old, so moved on 3 years. But you know, it is getting easier and easier. I think we are breaking down those barriers, and I think some really senior people across the industry are wanting advice from women and wanting to remove that unconscious bias, and I'm really excited by that.
A lot of people would expect that the creative industries would be one of the more progressive areas, but it's still overwhelmingly run by men, isn't it?
Yeah, 36% of the whole workforce is female, and if you look at the broader economy, 51% of the workforce is female. So it's definitely underrepresented.
And you've taken direct steps to address that, right? You know, you've limited the number of white men appearing on the dots. I mean, so pale, male and stale is clearly not your way, but how, I mean, what about those people that don't make the cut? I mean, how do you feel? I mean, is it just, are they just the casualties, or is this the fair way to do it, do you think?
We feature anyone who's amazing. We just have a rule that over 50% of the people we feature are female and over 30% BAME. And that's representative of society as a whole. So it's equality. It's not kind of going diversity for diversity's sake.
Can you ever be objective on a thing like amazing? I mean, how do you objectively measure or qualify an amazing person to appear on the dot site?
Well, luckily we have around 6,000 clients that help us do that. So they're shortlisting people all the time, they're liking projects all the time. So all of that feeds into our algorithm. But when it comes to the curation, that is a rule and hard and fast
So we've
rule.
got a kind of cross between TripAdvisor meets LinkedIn. You're constantly getting... So that feedback is actually how you stay on the site, is it?
Yeah, it's all about data, and it's all about collecting what people love, because creativity is really personal. The kind of creative you like and the kind of creative I like is very different, so it's about understanding
So
that
if I'm a
personal
creative
difference.
wanting to get work through Google or whoever it is that you're working with, what's one of the kind of the golden rules in terms of actually being a good candidate on the dots?
I think the first thing is around the whole way the site builds is people post projects and then tag the full teams around those projects. So first and foremost, go onto the dots, there's hundreds of thousands of projects, and tag yourself and get credit for the work that you've actually done. And that's the most important thing. That's how you get discovered.
And when you've got established agencies, I mean, I saw M&C Saatchi up there, I mean, essentially running their business through freelancers. I mean, in the end, are they going to be casualties to this sort of business model themselves? I mean, what stops me going direct?
Nothing. So at the moment, we're very much disrupting recruitment agents, but because we have the data on the full teams that deliver projects, we can absolutely disrupt the advertising industry, and that's our next step.
And does that drive pricing down, or does or is ultimately, does the rising tide catch all boats?
It drives pricing down, but it drives the remuneration for the actual creators up. So we're just cutting out the middleman, and that's the most important.
And the clients themselves, what do they feel they're getting out of it?
They just get incredible talent, and they get straight to the source. So instead of having to go through a recruitment agent or going through an agency, you can go direct to the people who make stuff.
I mean, presumably talent is a major issue for them. I mean, can they find it outside of something like the Dots, do you think?
No, I mean, gosh, LinkedIn is very traditional.
Right.
It's great for finance, it's great for anyone that's in that white-collar workforce, but when you're starting to talk about people who actually create things, so anything from developers to designers to photographers, illustrators, interior designers, architects, LinkedIn is absolutely not where they go.
And we're going to go to the break in a moment, but is there enough talent out there? I mean, can you find enough of the right candidates to fill those roles?
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 million creators here in the UK, which is absolutely massive. That's more than there are in New York. But yeah, I mean, about 80 million people are employed in the no-collar market in Europe and the US. So yeah, it's a very exciting space to be in.
So awareness is your biggest challenge right now in terms of getting more of them galvanised?
Yeah, but we are scaling organically. So yeah, it's awareness, but for me, it's just the race is on to take on LinkedIn.
Right, we're going to be back in just a moment. Now, Frank Sinatra, he once crooned about New York. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Well, London sings to the same tune when it comes to creatives. So start spreading the news, because Pip is about to tell us how to make it in the capital. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Welcome back. My guest today is the founder of the Dots, Pip Jamieson. Now, Pip, you said that London has more creators in the world, more even than New York.
Correct.
I don't want you to sing New York, New York, but why has London got those creatives right here in the city?
Do you know what? It's because all the creative industries are a melting pot in London. So in the US, you've got the film industry in LA, you've got the tech industry in San Fran, you've got the advertising industry that's actually in New York. But here, everyone comes together, which is really collaborative and amazing, which is why we produce such great
But in terms of why that is, because that's more than presumably than just English or British creatives. This is worldwide sort of stock of talent that's found their home here. Why have they come here?
Well, funnily enough, when Trump got in the US, we actually saw a Trump bump with loads of people from the US signing up to the Dots and wanting to come to London.
So lots of New York Democrats coming over to London.
Yeah, and we saw the same for a Brexit bump. So the moment Brexit came, everyone was signing up to the Dots to get work here.
Well, so Brexit brought, more creatives into the UK?
Into the Dots platform, because they were looking for work here in the UK.
And why was that? Was that because of the currency, or...?
I think because it might be the last chance that they can easily get into the UK and actually work here in the creative industries in the UK.
Fascinating decision of people to do that. So has that sort of bump continued in terms of European creators wanting to come here?
It has, but at the same time, our community is borderless, so it doesn't really matter where you are. A lot of our clients will hire freelance creatives who are in Berlin or Barcelona, so it doesn't actually matter where they are.
So there's not a geography point?
No.
But you've also said that London is the best possible place to build a network like the one you're building. Presumably it's more than just critical mass. I mean, you've mentioned some of the segments, but are there other factors at play in terms of building a business like yours?
In terms of building the community itself, I mean, it sort of spreads. Creatives are very well networked. So if you start kind of going into little creative clusters, then it sort of virally spreads for it. And the reason London's brilliant is because all the different industries are in one place. In the US, the clusters would have to form into different cities. So we're getting the whole aggregate community together.
And when you look at an issue like diversity, I mean, London is one of the most diverse cities on the planet. I mean, how important is that to actually helping creative sort of industries thrive?
Do you know what? It's all about role models. And I guess a lot of the work we do is celebrating amazing creativity by minority groups that can actually encourage more people into the industries. And I think, it's a brilliant, diverse melting pot here, but a lot of kids don't even know, for example, the creative industries as an option. And that's what we're trying to change.
So that's a great goal. But do you get a better creative output by bringing lots of different
Yeah,
people?
absolutely.
Why is that?
I experienced firsthand at MTV the problem that comes from a homogenous workforce, because if we all are the same, we all think the same, which means our creative output is stale. And there's endless research that diversity and inclusivity is basically just good for creativity, because there's more people coming up with ideas and different experiences that can come up with ideas.
I mean, you've talked about the kind of Brexit sort of boost, if you like. for you personally, but do you think Brexit is good for the creative industries? I mean, is that, or is it actually a backward step when you look at an issue like London's ongoing diversity?
I think, it's borderless these days anyway, so just putting up a barrier called Brexit isn't going to stop the flow of labour. It just means people are going to work elsewhere.
But it might stop the way people feel about a place, do you think, in terms of it being open and progressive?
It might do. I mean, I would say the vast majority of the creative industries voted against Brexit, and we look after a millennial generation who are under 35s, and I wouldn't be surprised if they get us back into Europe in 10 years. So we might look back in history and say this was just a wonderful waste of our time.
I mean, you've also said that you're planning now to expand in the US rather than Europe. Is that because of Brexit, or are there other factors at play here?
We've just got huge growth through Europe at the moment. So we've got clusters forming all across Europe. So it's just a natural progression for us to follow the community and give them the opportunities they want.
So does that mean sort of spending more time in the States? Does that mean physical growth of offices?
That's exactly what we're working out this year. So I'm off to Silicon Valley in a couple of months to start working out the roadmap for that.
And do you think, when you're in Silicon Valley, do they recognise the London premium? Do they recognise London as the place that you're portraying, the quality choice?
In terms of creativity, yes, I think it's recognised globally that London is the creative cluster of the world. So yeah, I think there's a massive respect for London.
So right, I mean, if I could wave my magic wand and watch out London, I'm going to make you mayor for the day. I mean, in terms of actually protecting this sector, creating 5% of the UK's GDP. What's the one big thing right now that the political class should think about in terms of doing to make the creative industry stronger, better?
Do you know what? I actually think they're doing a very good job. It's actually one of the most progressive places in terms of thinking about creativity as a soul of what the business is. So
this is a tick for the mayor?
This is a tick for the mayor.
Tick for the mayor. Tick for, he'll be thrilled. I know he watches it with his cocoa. So actually there is a progressive sort of political climate for creatives in London.
Creatives, entrepreneurs, yeah, I think actually it's a fantastic place to start a business and create things.
I want to move on because, one of the things that you do as a business is you're disrupting recruitment cycles. You're part of this wave which is expecting to disrupt the very way that we work. And you're reveling in that change. But do you ever worry that people might get left behind, that this is just something that well-educated elites can benefit from, and a lot of people have got to be a bit more concerned about being out of that sort of opportunity?
Yes, I mean, the reason I'm passionate about creativity is there's three things machines do very badly. They don't have common sense, they don't have empathy, and they can't mimic that human capability to be creative. The challenge is there might be some people left behind, and I guess what I'm trying to do is democratise the creative industries, so anyone outside of the creative industries can join the industry and get those opportunities.
And is there a responsibility on the disruptors themselves to be part of the solutions for the people that might get left behind?
Absolutely. I think all technology products should have that social conscience involved.
And to your point about creatives and the robots, I mean, your chair and investor, Sir John Hegarty, said there's no algorithm for creativity. Creators are our future workforce. If you're going to create a nation of those creatives, what are the first steps? What do you actually do?
I think it's about being curious. I mean, we're all creative. We're born creative. I mean, that's what makes us human. And it's just cultivating that. It's that curiosity. It's that appetite to learn. It's jumping on the dots and kind of working out what are creative careers, what could I be doing? Everyone has that creative passion. It's just about igniting that.
So how creative is the 9 to 5? I mean, is that what's going to go? I mean, are we to the traditional model of turning up and knocking off? That's going, is it?
Yeah, but isn't that wonderful? You could actually love what you do every day and actually make stuff that you'd be excited about. But
do you think some people buy into the certainty of life, that they know when I'm required and when I'm off? I mean, you're basically advocating an always-on sort of world, aren't you?
Yeah, but when you love what you do, it never feels like work. So that's what I want to get across to everyone.
People can love what they do. They can have their freedom. Yeah. So in terms of actually making progress in that world, presumably we're all going to have more jobs over our lifetime. In terms of actually how you prepare, your advice for selling yourself in that world. I mean, I read two things that you said. If you want to get a job, then smile. Fair enough. And don't burn any bridges. Is one of those your favourite, or are there others in terms of the advice you'd give?
The smart one is always there.
Yeah.
But in terms of other advice, it's these days you are going to job hop. It's going to be part and parcel of the new economy. So really just think about what you love doing and make a career out of that. This is the time to do what you love, and that's exciting.
And for those that are worried about the stresses of I've got a mortgage, I've got debts, I've got bills I've got to pay, I mean, is that just get on with it? Or actually should you be worried about the potential flip side of not having the regular benefits that a normal career might give you in terms of job security and a regular check every week or month?
Yeah, I think I have to talk from the millennials' perspective because that is the majority of our community. But you know, this is a community that maybe thinks they're never going to retire, and so those things that were important to the generation above to this generation aren't so important.
So are they more fearless?
Yes. Yeah.
And does that mean that? And is that fearlessness? Is it based on kind of just hope or strategy? I mean,
I think it's based on, there is a very different, no difference between happiness in a human from a certain level income to a bigger level of income. I think this generation have realised, you know, I don't want the 200 grand job at PwC. It's not going to make me happier. I would rather have the 60 grand job in the creative industries where I'm going to love what I do.
Right, so the happy life is not necessarily a rich life, but it might be a more creative life.
Correct.
I mean, I noticed that you're living on a houseboat called Horace, and and every weekend you're rowing on a little boat called Horace to go and get your groceries. I mean, is that the big lesson here? Live differently.
Yeah, live differently. Craft the life you want. Do the career you want. And you know, just making money never made anyone happy. Just making money. If you love what you do, you're happy.
Love what you do, you're happy. Right. Let's take that advice back, because I want to just go back to your former self, the civil servant, the Whitehall you, working for David Blunkett, Home Secretary, really prestigious job in an established career. What would yourself then make up the you that you've turned out to be today? What would she tell you? Would she be horrified, or would she be saying, good for you?
I think she'd be saying, good for you. And I think I've never regretted any of my career twists and turns. They've all been amazing. I learned so much from David. But yeah, I'm just really happy I've ended up here and now. But all of those experiences have led to where I am.
But presumably, if you had your time again, you wouldn't do that. You'd just jump to what you're doing.
Do you know what? I would. I mean, I learned so much from government. I learned so much in terms of business and economics and maths. All of that has been fundamental in running a business now. So I would absolutely do all the twists and turns the whole way through.
And in terms of the best lesson that it's given you in life, in terms of what you're doing right now, what might that be?
Fearlessness and just jumping into things. And working for David probably was one of the early stages of my passion for diversity. I realised how a disability isn't necessarily a disability, and how it was almost his superpower. And we have to be more inclusive to bring brilliant people like David into more workforces. And I think that was a really brilliant learning for me.
Pip, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time this week. And that's all we have time for this episode of The Capital Conversation. Thanks to my guest today, Pip Jamieson, an entrepreneur who's living the dream so that others can too. It's been a story about creative inspiration and the changing world of work, potential and how you realise it. And that, of course, is The Capital Conversation. I'll see you next time.